listener to the Campfire Cult podcast. From a camper van deep in the haunted woods, I bring you first-hand accounts of chilling encounters with the paranormal. Step into the night and take a peek into the realm where reality and the supernatural collide. My name is Jazz, and I'll be your host. Welcome back, campers. From the fog-choked redwoods of Northern California to the rain-soaked peaks of Washington, something ancient still moves through the trees. Tonight we're heading west, deep into the wild places of California, Oregon, and Washington, where the line between legend and reality blurs. So grab your coffee, zip up that sleeping bag, and throw another log on the fire, because there's no telling what's out there in the dark watching us from the tree line. Let's begin. First up, 4 friends camping near Sugar Pine Reservoir hear whispers in the woods, then find a single barefoot print in untouched snow.
Over Easter break in 2006, 3 friends and I went camping up near Sugar Pine Reservoir in California. There was still snow everywhere, and the gates to the main campground were locked. So we kept driving until we found an old logging road and followed it until we came across a decent pullout. The road split into a small loop, and there was a clearing that looked like it had been used not too long ago. Spent shells, a little trash. It wasn't perfect, but it would do. It rained almost the entire time. Cold, sleety, miserable rain. The temperature barely hit 40 during the day, not warm enough to melt the snow. It was the 4 of us. My buddy Mike, our friend Jay, and Jay's girlfriend, Carrie. Our camp layout formed a big triangle. Jay and Carrie's tent at the top, mine and Mike's tent off one corner near my truck, and an easy-up canopy on the other corner, where Jay's truck was backed in so we could use the tailgate as a cooking table. We didn't walk through the center of that triangle. No reason to. That first night, the rain turned to wind and we all huddled under the easy-up, drinking hot chocolate and playing cards until we couldn't take the cold anymore. None of us were drinking or partying. Jay and Carrie were religious, and she was studying at a Pentecostal college down in Stockton. Mike and I shared a big leaky tent, and I'd brought cots so we could stay off the ground. Good thing, too. By the middle of the night, there was an inch of standing water with ice starting to form inside the tent. A couple hours after we went to bed, I started hearing noises outside. I grew up fishing and camping around Sugar Pine, so I knew the sounds of that forest. Bears, mountain lions, deer. But this wasn't that. This was whispering. Voices. They were all around us. Low, muffled, male voices. At first, I thought maybe someone had driven up, but I hadn't heard a single vehicle, and there was no sound of footsteps crunching through snow. Just those quiet, steady whispers. One voice near Jay's truck, another somewhere out by the road, back and forth. I lay there in the dark, every muscle tensed, listening. After 15, maybe 20 minutes, I reached over to wake Mike, only to realize he was already awake. He'd reached for me at the same time. He actually grabbed a handful of my long hair by accident. We looked at each other. You hear that? Yeah, voices. Someone's out there. Now, Mike and Jay were not the type of guys you wanted to mess with. Jay's dad had owned a martial arts studio, and Jay had a black belt or 2. Mike was a wrestler and played football with us. If someone was creeping around our campsite, they picked the wrong night. We moved slow, boots on, flashlights ready. Mike grabbed his kukri, I grabbed my hunting knife. We counted down, 1, 2, 3. Unzipped the tent and burst out into the cold. Lights on, beams slicing through the trees. Nothing. We swept the area, calling out, "Who's out there? We can hear you. What do you want?" But there was no response, just rain, wind, silence. We searched for a while, up the road, down the road, and found nothing. Eventually, we killed the flashlights and hid behind some trees, hoping the whispers would start again so we could pinpoint them. But they didn't. Then Carrie's voice called out from her tent, "Hey, I heard it too. The voices, it wasn't me or Jay. Jay hadn't heard anything, but Carrie said she'd been awake for hours listening. We eventually crawled back into our tent, boots still on, knives and flashlights in hand, waiting for morning. None of us really slept. When daylight finally came, we gathered under the easy up for coffee while Carrie made breakfast. At one point, she stepped outside and suddenly yelled for us. We ran over, and she was pointing to the center of that triangle, the one we'd never walked through. There in the snow was a single footprint, a human footprint, 5 toes, clear arch, deep enough to be fresh, but surrounded by untouched snow. If it had been there before, the rain would have erased it, but it was crisp and clean. We destroyed it, mostly for peace of mind, and spent the rest of the day hiking around, checking for tracks, tire marks, anything. There was nothing. That evening, Jay and Carrie decided they'd had enough and left. Mike and I stayed one more night, trying to sleep in the cab of my truck. We didn't. We just sat there, keys in the ignition, starting the engine every time a sound spooked us, just to make sure it would still turn over. At first light, we packed up and got out of there. I haven't been back up that road since. That was just northwest of Sugar Pine Reservoir, near Indian Creek. Somewhere deep in those logging roads.
Coming up, a late-night mouse rescue leads a woman to witness something impossible on a quiet suburban road, a towering black-furred dogman in the dark.
This is a strange one. Last night, right around midnight, I saw a dogman, werewolf, or whatever you want to call it. Now, I don't live way out in the woods or anything. It's a neighborhood, but our backyard borders a huge stretch of forest. So, not exactly rural, but not city living either. The funny part? It all started because of a mouse. I set a live trap in the kitchen. I don't kill them, I always catch and release. Around midnight, I heard the loud pop of the trap door shutting. Woke me right up. I didn't want to leave the little guy in there all night trying to chew his way out. So I figured I'd take him out right then. When I release mice, I always drive them about 3 miles away, deep into the forest. I'm not about to just drop him off at a neighbor's house and hand them a mouse problem. Anyway, I grabbed the trap, got in my car, and that's when it started. This deep twisting pain hit my stomach, hard, like something was wrong. It wasn't normal nausea. It was this sense of dread that came out of nowhere. I don't get stomach aches, but this felt like a warning. Still, I started driving. Barely a block from my house, I slowed down. Something enormous was standing at the side of the road. At first, I thought it was just a really tall dog, but the shape of it was off. Its outline was darker than the night around it. As I rolled closer, maybe 10 miles an hour now, it stepped out into the streetlight and crossed the road in front of me. It wasn't running, but it moved with purpose. Fast, heavy, deliberate. And that's when I realized it wasn't a dog. It wasn't a bear either. No belly, no lumbering movement. It was huge. 3, maybe 4 times the size of a wolf. A humanoid shape hunched on all fours, its back arched high. The head was massive, wolf-like, but wrong somehow. Jet black fur, lanky legs. It looked almost identical to the werewolf Professor Lupin turns into in Harry Potter. That same horrifying sinewy build. On all fours, its back was at least 4 feet high. The head, 5 feet. Easy. It wasn't a sick dog. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't anything that belongs in these woods. And the strangest part? I could feel it. The energy coming off this thing was dark and heavy, like it carried a shadow with it. I kept driving, slow, watching as it slipped into the brush on the side of the road. When I passed, I saw its silhouette again, crouched by a bush, just watching me. I didn't stop. I drove to the release spot, opened the trap, let the mouse go, and got back in the car. When I got home, I ran straight into the garage and slammed the door behind me. Heart pounding. They say when you know what you saw, you know. And I know exactly what I saw. That was no dog, that was something else.
All that because of a mouse. You're a better person than I am. What I find interesting is your uneasy stomach feeling before seeing it. Your body knew before your brain did. Next, a witness recalls his 1985 Temecula encounter with an 11-foot Bigfoot. Glowing blue eyes, foul stench, and footprints that proved it was real.
The Bigfoot I saw was in Temecula, California, back in June of 1985. It was late at night, and I'd pulled off onto a dirt road because I couldn't drive any farther. When I got out to take a leak, that's when I heard it and saw it. The first thing that hit me was the smell. It was awful, like something dead, maybe a coyote that had been out in the sun too long. The stench drifted up from the dry riverbed about 50 yards away, where the trees stood around 40, maybe 45 feet tall. I aimed my flashlight toward the smell and caught movement, and that's when I saw the eyes, glowing bright blue, not reflecting light like an animal's eyes normally do. They were actually glowing. Judging by the trees, this thing stood close to 11 feet tall. Its eyes were just above a limb I measured the next day at exactly that height. I had my .357 on me, but something told me that if I shot it, it wouldn't do a damn thing. I got back in my truck and tore out of there, but that old Toyota felt way too slow. The next morning, I went back to the same spot. I measured that tree limb again, and there they were, footprints, about 20 inches long, maybe 9 inches wide. Whatever it was massive. I've carried that same Colt Python for years, loaded hot, and I'm a good shot. But standing there, looking at those prints, I knew it wouldn't matter. Believe me or don't, 11 feet sounds impossible, but that's what I saw. The only thing that really set this one apart, besides the smell, was those eyes, glowing a bright, unnatural blue. I was only 70 yards away, close enough to know it was real. That stretch of land runs near the Pima Indian Reservation, down toward Mount Palomar Observatory, miles of rugged, forested country. And somewhere out there, I'm certain, it's still roaming.
Real quick, when I'm away from the campfire and not producing this show, I'm a brand designer and coffee roaster. This year I launched my own coffee brand called Outlands Coffee. If you love damn good coffee and want to support a fiercely independent small business while also supporting this podcast, head over to outlandscoffee.com and give us a shot. I roast to order, single origin perfection alongside a couple of bold, adventurous blends, crafted for those who take their coffee as seriously as their campfire stories. Here in Washington, we don't just believe in Bigfoot, we believe in great coffee too. Try it for yourself. Use code CAMPFIRE for $5 off your first order. Now, back to the show. Next up, while driving before dawn through Oregon's Willamette Valley, a vineyard worker encounters a pale humanoid figure sprinting across the road.
Last year, I spent a season living in the Willamette Valley in Oregon, working on a vineyard making wine. We sourced fruit from a few other vineyards around the valley, which meant I had to get up before dawn a couple times a week to take maturity samples. One of those mornings, around 5:30, I was driving across this long stretch of flat farmland. 2 lanes, pitch black, not another car in sight. The sun hadn't even started to rise yet. As I came around a gentle curve, I saw movement in the darkness ahead of me. Something crossing the field toward the road. At first I figured it was a bird, maybe a flock of them swooping low over the ground. But as I got closer, and my headlights just barely caught it, I realized it wasn't flying. It was running. It came out of the dark and hit the edge of my headlights for maybe 2 seconds. That's all. But in those 2 seconds, I saw it clear as day. Pale white, hairless, and impossibly thin. It was humanoid, but not human. Its arms pumped like a sprinter's, its body angled forward at nearly 45 degrees, covering ground faster than anything I've ever seen. Then it was gone, back into the darkness, swallowed whole. I sat there driving, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. That image is burned into my mind. It matched the descriptions I've heard of those pale, crawler-type creatures. Tall, lanky, completely unnatural. To this day, I can't shake it. Oregon has a darkness that feels different, heavier, like it's hiding something just beyond the reach of your headlights. Has anyone else seen something like that in the Willamette Valley? I'd love to know I'm not the only one.
That stretch of the Willamette can feel otherworldly in the dark. Whatever you saw, Crawler, spirit, or something else, it's not something I want to run into. Let me know what you think it was in the comments. Coming up next, an account from the book On the Track of Bigfoot by Marion T. Place, where in 1890s Oregon, loggers near the Chetco River faced a towering fanged creature that left their camp and their lives in ruins. In the late 1890s, near the Chetco River in southern Oregon, a group of loggers and their families came face to face with something monstrous, and it didn't end well. They were camped by the river, sleeping in canvas tents. Each morning they woke to find their freshly cut logs, heavy pieces that took 3 men to move, tossed around like twigs. Huge human-like footprints marked the damp earth nearby. At first they thought maybe it was bears, so a few of the men followed the prints, pushing through the brush and over uprooted saplings. But the trail vanished. That night, the camp was shaken awake by a shrill, unearthly scream from the woods. One man grabbed a rifle, lit a torch, and stepped into the darkness. The others followed close behind. Moments later, he came running back, pale as a ghost, collapsing at their feet. He could barely speak, just muttering about a huge, hairy creature, 8 feet tall, with yellow eyes, fangs, and hands like a man. The next night, 2 men decided to track it down and kill it. They carried rifles and a single lantern, disappearing into the trees. Minutes later, the camp heard screaming, gunfire, then silence. When the men didn't return, the others armed themselves and followed the sound of the struggle. About a half-mile from camp, their lanterns lit a scene of horror. Bodies crushed as if slammed against trees, blood everywhere. Whatever it was had incredible strength, but of the creature itself, there was no sign, only bloody footprints leading deeper into the woods. By sunrise, the camp was abandoned. The loggers packed up and fled, leaving behind their tools, their timber, and their dead. Days later, professional hunters combed those same woods. They found nothing but the silence. Next, a child in rural Oregon sees a towering red-brown Bigfoot cross the road before dawn, an encounter that would haunt her forever.
This happened when I was only 4 years old. My mom was driving my uncle to work in Durkee, Oregon. We were on Old Highway 30, somewhere between Baker City and Durkee. It was about 4:30 in the morning when we passed this old orchard. Must have been over 100 years old. My mom slowed down and said, "What is that, Tom?" My uncle squinted through the windshield and said, "I don't know." That's when I saw it too. It was huge, covered in reddish-brown hair from head to toe except for its face and hands. The biggest thing I'd ever seen. It stepped right over a barbed wire fence like it was nothing, crossed a ditch in one stride, and walked directly in front of our car. It stopped mid-step, maybe 5 feet away from the bumper. Just stood there, towering over us, at least 9 feet tall, staring right into the headlights. No one said a word. Time just stopped. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it turned and took off. It ran across the median between the old highway and the new Interstate 84, crossed both lanes, and climbed up a hill. At the top, it turned back, looked at us one last time, and then vanished over the ridge.
Coming up, 4 teens head to Big Sur for a night of beers and stars, but instead find themselves face to face with something not human.
Big Sur is a mountainous stretch of California's central coast, perched on the edge of the Los Padres National Forest overlooking the vast Pacific Ocean below. 3 friends and I, all between 16 and 18, lived in nearby Salinas. We'd planned a late-night trip to a secluded spot in Big Sur we called Top of the World. Hardly anyone ever went up there except the occasional local or hiker during the day. At night, it was just the animals. Foxes, bobcats, maybe even a mountain lion. No people, no cops. The perfect spot for 4 restless kids looking to drink a few beers under the stars. We drove down the Pacific Coast Highway, turned off onto Old Coast Road, a winding, hard-packed dirt route that used to be the main way in and out of Big Sur before the Bixby Bridge was built. Our spot sat just above that road with a jaw-dropping view of the ocean on one side and a deep ravine on the other. Down below, a creek cut through the darkness, either Bixby Creek or Little Sur River. I can't remember which. The party, though, never even began because of what happened next. It's burned into my memory, clear as the night it happened. With the exception of a few exact words spoken, I remember every detail like it was yesterday. Steve parked his mom's old Chevy Vega at the base of the incline leading up to our spot. We grabbed a few beers from the open hatchback and hiked halfway up the hill. It was steep, maybe 30 yards from the car to the top. What happened next took only seconds, but it felt like an eternity. We sat in a line facing the Pacific, the night air cool and still. Behind us, about 15 yards up, was the crest of the hill, and beyond that, the forest. We talked quietly for a while, letting the sound of the ocean fill the silence. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. Then something changed. It's hard to explain. The air felt heavy, charged, and all four of us felt it at the same time. Without a word, we turned around, each of us drawn to the same spot at the top of the hill. And there it was, a figure standing in silence maybe 15 yards away watching us. It wasn't human, I knew that immediately. It stood upright, arms at its sides, facing us but motionless. In the dim light, I could make out the outline of its head and body, both covered in long, dark hair. The hair flowed down from its head and blended into the rest of its body. There was a break where the face should have been, but I saw nothing. No eyes, no mouth, just darkness between the hair. The arms were long but proportional, also covered in thick hair. It was massive, at least 7 feet tall, and broad across the chest. Even without movement, it gave off a sense of immense strength. And it made no sound. I took all of that in within a second or two before instinct kicked in. That primal, electric jolt of fight or flight. And fight wasn't an option. Without saying a word, all four of us ran. I slipped on the incline, went down hard, and the others reached the car first. I didn't even try for a door. I just dove into the open hatchback. Steve floored it, gravel spraying behind us. We barely made it 2 turns before he lost control. The Vega skidded and went over the edge. By some miracle, the first 20 yards were a gradual slope, thick with brush that stopped us before we hit the sheer drop to the creek below. We climbed out, shaken but alive. Now came the decision: go back the way we came, just 3 miles to Highway 1. But that meant passing where it was, or take the long way nearly 5 times as far through the mountains. We didn't even debate it, we took the long way. It took hours, but eventually we reached the highway, scraped up, exhausted, but alive. And with a story we'd carry for the rest of our lives. I have no doubt about what we saw that night. It was a Bigfoot without a doubt.
Big Sur has a strange energy to it, something ancient and watchful. What did they see that night? Could have been a Bigfoot, or something older that just borrowed a familiar shape. Up next, a weekend getaway in a remote Washington yurt turns terrifying when something pale and human-like slinks through the darkness outside.
This happened about 4 years ago, in the small town of Chewelah, Washington. My girlfriend at the time, now my ex, though that part's not really important, decided we'd take a long weekend getaway in a yurt. We both loved being in nature, and the idea of escaping the city to somewhere quiet and remote sounded perfect. And honestly, it was. What stood out most about staying in that yurt was just how dark and quiet the nights were. If you're not used to the wilderness, it's almost unsettling. The silence feels heavy. The darkness, absolute. The outhouse was about 75 yards from the yurt, so you had to bring a flashlight to find your way. That first night, nature called. I stepped outside, swept the flashlight through the trees, and caught a flash of eyes reflecting back at me. A deer. A good-sized doe just standing there. If it weren't for that glint of light, I'd have never known she was there. The real encounter happened on our last night, sometime around 11 or midnight. We were playing cards by the fire when suddenly, bang, something slammed into the side of the yurt. It wasn't a branch or the wind. It sounded like something ran straight into it, full force. Startled, I grabbed the flashlight and went to check it out. We were far out, sure, but still on someone's property, not deep enough in the woods for it to be a bear or mountain lion. At least that's what I told myself. When I opened the door and shined the light outside, I saw something, in almost the same spot where the deer had been before. But this time, there was no eye shine. I only saw it for a second, but it was white or gray, and it had a slender, human-like build. What really unsettled me was how it moved. It crouched down low, like it was trying to stay hidden, and then slinked away, smooth and animal-like, almost like the way a big cat or a monkey might move. And then, it was gone. I didn't go after it. Hell no. I was scared it might have been a cougar or something, and I wasn't about to get mauled in front of my girlfriend, especially not one who'd break up with me later anyway. Whatever I saw that night, though, it wasn't like anything I've ever seen before. I didn't catch a face, just that strange, pale shape and that unnatural movement. Maybe it was something ordinary. I only saw it for a few seconds, but I've never seen anything move like that, in real life or even on film. It was just wrong. So I guess I'm wondering if anyone out there has ever seen something similar, or has any idea what the hell that could have been.
Next, a witness in Gilroy, California recalls a night when a towering red-eyed bat-winged creature floated silently above Uvas Creek.
About 15 years ago, I was living along Uvas Creek in my hometown of Gilroy, California. It was late summer, sometime between 12:30 and 1 a.m., when my two friends and I heard something that froze us cold. A scream. Not just any scream, but the sound of something dying downstream from us. I was already heading outside to check on my neighbor's tent, which sat close to where that high-pitched cry came from. The tent was empty, just like it should be. As I started back up the trail toward my spot, the moon lit the path, nearly full, bright enough to see by. Then I heard it. 3 bursts of air. I turned toward the creek. At the bend from behind the trees and brush, something stepped, or rather floated, into view. It looked like a black devilish gargoyle, 8 to 10 feet tall with red eyes and a red-stained mouth. It had bat-like wings, but it wasn't flying. It was hovering, gliding past me in total silence. Its skin looked thick and rubbery, like something that didn't belong on this earth. I stayed completely still, repeating in my head, "Don't look at me. Don't look at me." It floated right by, unaware I was there. That's when my friend whispered, "What are you doing?" I motioned him over. Come here, come here." As the thing drifted around the next bend, my buddy Rich finally saw it from behind. He just stared and said, "What the hell was that?" For 15 years I've told this story hoping someone would believe me. Most people don't. They think I'm crazy. But here's the thing. This year, 2024, 4 other people have reported seeing the same thing twice in the past 6 months. What still gets me is how it stayed in the air. It only flapped its wings 3 times, just 3, and that was it. Something that big, moving that slow. There's no way it should have stayed up. But it did. And I know what I saw that night. Nothing's ever going to change my mind.
Man, a winged, red-eyed thing gliding silently over Uvas Creek? That's straight out of a nightmare. Mothman? A gargoyle? Let me know what you think it was in the comments. Coming up, a soldier stationed at Fort Irwin recalls a late-night drive through the desert and a face-to-face encounter with something not human.
I used to be stationed at Fort Irwin, California. It's a long story, but there's this 30-mile stretch of road that runs from Barstow, the nearest town, all the way out to the base. It cuts straight through the middle of a vast, empty desert. Along that road are dozens of crosses, memorials left by soldiers and their families for those who never made it back. People have been dying on that highway for years. One night, my platoon mate and I were driving back from the mall in Victorville. It was late, and we'd just turned onto Fort Irwin Road. Almost immediately, I noticed something strange. Fresh, bloody tire marks streaking off the pavement toward one of those crosses. The nameplate on it read, August 11th, 2006. That gave me chills. About 20 minutes into the drive, nothing but sand and darkness on both sides, I glanced over at my buddy. He was driving, lip-syncing to some song on the radio. And that's when something darted across the road in front of us. We were doing about 75 miles an hour. I only caught a glimpse, but it was enough. It looked like a large humanoid creature covered in fur with a wet, matted face. It turned toward us as it ran, fast, and for a split second our eyes met. Those eyes, they weren't glowing or reflective. They were white voids like dead light. It wasn't fear in its expression, it was something else. It was like it was saying, "I see you." It was the most skin-crawling moment of my life. Whatever it wasn't human. And it wasn't just an animal either. It felt aware, sentient. When our eyes met, I can't explain it, but time seemed to slow down. It did something to us. I turned to my friend and he just shouted, "Holy shit." The thing bolted across the other side of the road and disappeared into the desert night. He slammed the brakes. We got out to look. There was nothing, no tracks, no sound, just empty desert and the wind. My buddy kept mumbling, "Large, hairy bird. No, not bird, bear. No, what was that thing?" We drove the rest of the way back in silence. The music was off, the car was quiet. He's normally the loud one, but not that night. We just sat there trying to make sense of what we'd seen. Back at base, we told the others. Nobody believed us, at least not at first. A few weeks later, whispers started going around. People saying they'd seen something out there too. Not everyone wanted to talk about it, but the stories were the same. Years after I got out of the service, I started digging online. Turns out there's native folklore about something living out there in the salt flats. Some tribes believed Sasquatch roamed the barren desert near Fort Irwin. Whatever that thing was, it left a mark. I can still see those white eyes when I close mine. And my friend, he turned pale that night, white as a ghost. We never spoke about it again.
Next up, a Seattle construction worker spots a cloaked, shimmering figure near an off-ramp, vanishing like the Predator.
I'm a 40-year-old construction worker from Seattle, Washington. I'm a Christian. That's how I was raised. And I can tell you right now, what I saw doesn't fit into anything I've ever been taught. This happened in late August of 2018. I was riding shotgun in our work truck. My boss was driving, and another guy from the crew was sitting in the back. We were on our way to a job site in Seattle, exiting off I-5, the main highway that runs from Canada all the way down to Mexico. As we slowed down on the off-ramp, I was half zoned out, just staring out the window. Then, out of nowhere, I caught something moving to the right, something that looked like it wasn't really there. It was shaped like a person, but it was cloaked, bending the light around it, exactly like the invisible form of the Predator from the movies. I shot upright in my seat and yelled, "Oh my God, do you see that? Look!" There was a small cluster of trees nearby, and just beyond them were a few homeless people milling around, completely unaware of what was walking about 20 yards in front of them. I was frozen. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what to say or do. I watched that shimmering figure for maybe 4 or 5 seconds before I turned to my boss to ask again if he saw it. When I looked back, it was gone. Vanished. In my 40 years, I've never seen anything like it. I told my wife what happened, but no one else. Until now, because I need to know, what was that thing?
Next, a witness recalls a childhood encounter with a tall, ghostly figure staring through her window.
This happened about 23 years ago, and I still can't forget it. I was around 10 years old. I wasn't dreaming, and I wasn't paralyzed. He was just there, standing outside my window, and we stared at each other for what felt like a long time. I remember pulling the covers up to my nose, too scared to move. My eyes locked on his. At some point, I must have passed out from exhaustion or shallow breathing, but I'm not sure when. Even now, I can't sleep with an uncovered window at night. The darkness reminds me of that ghost white figure watching me from the other side of the glass. Sometimes I still think I see him there again. He never did anything violent or threatening, but being watched through my bedroom window by something that wasn't human, that stays with you. He gave off this strange, almost academic vibe, like an old researcher studying me silently. He never tried to communicate. Judging by the height of the window, he had to be at least 6 feet tall. He was slender with long arms and no visible ears. I couldn't tell if the fur was part of him or if it was something he was wearing, like a fuzzy wetsuit. It only happened that one time. This was in Calaveras County, California. I filed a report with MUFON years later, hoping maybe someone else had seen something like it. So far, no one has. But I'd love to hear if anyone out there has met the same ghostly figure staring back through the dark.
Man, I'm not sure how I'd feel about something watching me through my window. That's nightmare fuel for sure, but the way it watched quietly, it almost sounds like an observer, not a predator. Maybe something studying us the same way we'd study it. For our final story of the evening, while camping on Bald Mountain, a man woke to a towering creature with glowing yellow eyes lifting his tent in the dark forest.
It was late June of 2018. My friends and I had just gotten off work, and since it was Friday, we decided to go camping up on Bald Mountain in Sugarloaf Ridge State Park, Northern California. We found a spot near a small creek just off the side of the road and started setting up camp. The first thing we did was get a fire going. Around 8 o'clock that evening, while we were sitting around talking, we heard this strange knocking sound coming from up the creek. We brushed it off at the time, figuring it was just an animal or the sound echoing through the trees. But later that night, sometime between 2:30 and 3 a.m., things got terrifying. We were all in our tents when I heard heavy footsteps walking into camp. Then came this low, guttural grunting. I froze. That's when I saw it. Through the thin wall of my tent, I could see the silhouette of something massive. I remember watching as it leaned over me. Its shape was huge, towering, and it filled me with absolute dread. Then it reached down and grabbed the top of my tent. I looked up and saw these vivid yellow eyes staring back at me through the fabric. Its face, it almost looked human, but the proportions were all wrong. It was enormous, way bigger than Shaq, and I'm 6'4" myself. This thing had to bend down just to grab my tent. It lifted the whole tent off the ground with me still inside, and then dropped it. I started screaming. I couldn't help it. And that's when my friend's dad came running out with a gun. He fired. The shot tore through the air. It even sounded like it went through the tent, and immediately after, I heard these heavy, thunderous footsteps crashing away into the forest. We didn't waste a second. Everyone started packing up, desperate to get out of there. As we were throwing stuff in the car, we heard whooping calls echoing from different directions in the woods. It sounded like there was more than one of them. On our way out, a rock big enough to leave a dent slammed into the side of the car. The next day, some of the guys went back. They found large footprints all around the camp. Since then, I've heard other people say they've had strange experiences at that same spot. Most folks don't even camp there anymore. My grandfather even told me once that he had his own encounter just 4 miles from that area. He described the same thing, those glowing yellow eyes in the dark.
Whatever he saw wasn't just an animal. The strength, the glowing eyes, the whoops in the woods. It all lines up with classic Bigfoot behavior. Maybe Bald Mountain still has something wild watching from the trees. That's all for tonight, dear listeners. And please remember, if you want to support this podcast and love a damn good cup of coffee, head on over to outlandscoffee.com and use code CAMPFIRE for $5 off your first order and give us a try. If you want to become a Patreon cult member to get extended episodes and other full Patreon-only episodes, you can sign up at patreon.com/campfirecultpod for only $5 a month. Until next time, I'll be leaving you in the dark where whispers linger and shadows dance. Stay weary, sleep well, and beware the whispers in the night. If you have a story to tell, please reach out via email at contact@campfirecultpod.com or leave me a voicemail message at 720-297-8608. You can follow us anywhere on social media at Campfire Cult Pod and online at campfirecultpod.com. And finally, if you don't mind, please rate and review wherever possible.